Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of The Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, well, if you thought there was nothing to talk about in the world of Utah sports, well, you're kind of right. I'm here to tell you some of the news that has been popping up that has caught my attention and kind of breaking down what it means for the future of the Utah Jazz, as well as sports in Utah, and even Utah State football. Yeah, Utah State football getting a shout out at the beginning of June. Who'd have thunk it? Anywho, thank you all so much for being here. As always, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. That is the Mad Cave Podcast. You can find me on YouTube, the Mad Cave Podcast. And then you can also hit me up via email. Wherever you are listening, you can get that information there. And thank you for being here. Please rate, review the podcast, 5 stars, and then whatever you want to write in the review, please go for it. And please share this with one person that you think would enjoy the program. And if you happen to know Ryan Smith, you could pass it along to him too. All right. You might think I'm kidding. I'm not. Please do it. All right, let's dive into it. Let's start with the Utah State stuff. So ESPN did I fell for it. I'm sorry I fell for it. A way too early Pac-12 preview. I fell for it. It's the summer. Outside of baseball, there's not much going on that I care to watch. Sorry, Knights fans. I don't like watching your team play hockey. I think it's boring. It's not fun. It may win, but that doesn't mean I have to like watching it. So the Stanley Cup, yes, is happening. If I had to make a prediction for the Stanley Cup, Carolina in 6. That's my prediction based off of nothing. Just my gut. That's all. I haven't watched Carolina outside of the first 2 rounds, and I haven't watched Vegas or any playoff hockey after Vegas knocked out the Mammoth, or the Mammoth knocked themselves out by not being able to score 2 goals in overtime. I'm still bitter. I'm still bitter. I'm not going to shy away from it. Anywho, deep breaths, and back on target, Utah State. Going to the Pac-12, the state conference is what I will be calling it, because if you look at the teams in this new Pac-12, okay, it is the state conference. You have Washington State and Oregon State. Those are the 2 leftovers from when the Pac-12 blew up, and they brought in San Diego State, Boise State, Texas State, Fresno State, Utah State, Colorado State. Yep, that's everybody. So it is the state conference. It really is. Whether they did that on purpose or not, I would like to think that they did, because I like to think that there is still some whimsy in college athletics. So that's what we have here. And when you look at those teams, obviously Boise State and San Diego State are the front runners. They just are. With Washington State kind of floating around the outside there. Everybody else is just kind of hoping to hit 500 and make a bowl. That's really what the Pac-12 is this coming season. Now, let's just look at Utah State. They've got McKay Hillstead coming in to replace their quarterback room, whatever you want to call what they had there. It was fun. That's what we'll call it. It was fun. Robert and I is back with Bronco Mendenhall because they just can't quit each other. And so what we're looking at here is Utah State hoping to get to 500 is what ESPN is saying. They've got a decent QB. Yes, McKay Hillstead is a decent QB. He just wasn't good enough to be a Power 5 or a Power 4 quarterback. But he is good enough to play a group of 5, absolutely. So when you look at, I guess it's group of 6 now, right? Because the Pac-12 is back in it. I don't know. That's another question for a different day, I guess. But if you look at the skill positions for Utah State, Javen Jacobs and Noah White in the backfield. You've got 2 transfers coming in Javon Robinson and Eli Wood. This could be another explosive offense for Utah State. The big bugaboo here is the defense. Is there enough juice on the defensive side of the football to be able to at least hold a lead? At the very least. They did get Harrison Taggart from Cal, so that's a very big get by Bronco Mendenhall. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't go to a Power 4 conference school. He is good enough. He's not Cade Uluave, the linebacker that BYU got from Cal, but he's still pretty good. And that is going to help offset the loss of John Miller and Ike Taylor, but I just don't know. They've got a lot of potential, and Bronco Mendenhall did prove last year that he can get blood from a stone. He absolutely can. So we'll see if Utah State can get back to a bowl game. You look at their non-conference slate here. Utah, Washington, and then, well, okay, that's not just that's part of the non-conference slate. Let me restart here. When they start the season, it is Washington, the actual Washington of the Big Ten, which is still weird to say, Utah of the Big 12, and then Boise State in the first half of the season. That's your three biggest games in the first half of the season, and I disagree with that because rivalries should be at the final week of the season no matter what, and yes, Utah State and Boise State is a rivalry. Just look at how they played each other last season. It goes into my complaint with the Big 12 about BYU and Utah not being the final game of the season every year. It should be, absolutely. Anyway, that's what we're looking at so far for Utah State because the transfer portal is now only one time a year in college football with limited grants and exceptions, and there is that still going on. But overall, the rosters are the rosters now, with the transfer portal just being at the beginning of the year, and that's it. So we'll see what happens with Utah State, but I thought it was interesting that I fell for this, first of all, from Bill Connolly of ESPN, and second, that he's actually giving Utah State a chance to make a bowl. When last year I was the only one that I knew of that had a rosy expectation of Utah State, and that rosy expectation was 5 wins. So, hey, who knows? But I haven't gone into any sort of in-depth research to be able to tell you what's going to happen next season. It was just an early blindside and something that I fell for. I hate the way too earlys, but ESPN is calling it the 2026 Pac-12 college football preview. It's not the way too early. It's not anything like that. It's like an actual preview. So yes, they have Boise State winning it and winning it against San Diego State in the championship game. So there you go. With Utah State hopefully making a bowl. Moving on, Utah Jazz. It is reported that pen has not hit paper, so it's not official, but it's reported that the Jazz and Walker Kessler are expected to come to an agreement of Walker Kessler re-signing with the Jazz. And this is huge. This is huge, and not just because Walker Kessler is a giant human being, but because the entire axis of what the Jazz are building on this roster spins on Walker Kessler. He is that important. Because if you don't have Walker Kessler, you are then forced to play Jaren Jackson Jr. or Lauri Markkanen at the center position, or as it's now called, the 5. Neither guy wants to play there, and neither guy likes to play there. So you need Walker Kessler in there. What else does it do? Well, it allows defense to happen again. It doesn't matter the Jazz coach. Going back to Frank Layden, the way the Jazz play defense is they funnel the ball into the lane and have a big man try to block the shot. Go back to Mark Eaton, Thurl Bailey, Rudy Gobert, Greg Ostertag, and Rudy Gobert and like Carlos Boozer, like those guys, right? So having Walker Kessler there frees up the other two guys, Lauri Markkanen playing the 3 or the small forward, Jaren Jackson Jr. playing the 4. Those two can swap easily. And then you've got Keontae George playing the 1 or point guard position, which is already done. That's in ink. And then whoever kind of shows up and shows out at the 2 during fall camp, whether that is Ace Bailey or maybe it's Darren Peterson, or if the Wizards do a Wizards type thing, AJ DeBonsa. So it's very, very important that this deal gets done and it gets done early, because then the Jazz don't have to think, well, maybe we'll take Cam Boozer instead. Cam Boozer is going to be a fantastic player. He is. He's going to be an all-star. But he doesn't fit what the Jazz are trying to build. He's going to be a very good player. He's going to probably be the next Mr. Fundamental. If you don't know that reference, that's Tim Duncan. That's what everybody nicknamed Tim Duncan. He was just so good at the fundamentals that he was impossible to play against. That and his eyes went to the size of saucers every time a foul was called against him, but that's a different complaint for a different day. So, being compared to a Hall of Famer, Can't get much better than that. That's not where the Jazz would improve the most. They need a franchise-altering star, and those guys, in my opinion, are obviously A.J. DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, if his health issues are just creatine and cramps. If you've never had cramps before, they are scary. So I agree with what Darren Peterson said. Like, if you've never had cramps before and you start getting them all of a sudden, you're going to panic a little bit. So I agree with him there, but the doctors would have to sign off on that. The athletic training staff, the team doctors, all of them would have to say, yeah, it was just that. He didn't hydrate properly or whatever it was. And then for me, Caleb Wilson. Caleb Wilson could be a franchise-altering star. His time at North Carolina got cut short with a wrist injury. But when he was playing, North Carolina was a top 25 team. They were. When he got hurt, they became average. So, again, there's 3 players there that the Jazz would improve immensely having on their roster. And they have the number 2 pick. There's no trade going to happen. There's no trade that is going to happen between the Wizards and the Jazz. Neither team is that stupid. Well, the Wizards might be. I mean, there's a reason that they're picking number 1 and have picked in the lottery forever. Ever since that I can remember. Ever since they've really been known as the Wizards, they've been picking in the lottery, really. They had maybe 1 or 2 years with John Wall where they actually made the playoffs. But as far as I can remember, since they changed from the Bullets to the Wizards, they've been in the lottery. How about that? There was also a season or 2 where they had Anton Jameson in there. Anyway, wild to think about. And so the Jazz are sitting pretty at number 2. The team that will make a mistake would be number 1 in this draft. And so they're not going to trade. If anything, there's a lot of smoke right now around the Jazz being interested in Cam Boozer. Duh! The Jazz are interested in Darren Peterson, A.J. DeBonsa, Cam Boozer, Caleb Wilson, any number of players. They're interested in all of them. They want to dot their I's and cross their T's. They do not want to mess this up because they know the NBA is not going to allow them a top 2 pick probably ever again. This was a shocker among shocks that the Jazz got this pick, and they do not want to screw this up. What I'm thinking is happening with this smoke that they're pouring out about Cam Boozer has to do with, obviously, his dad is a part of the scouting staff for the Jazz. Obviously, Carlos Boozer played for the Jazz and got them to the Western Conference Finals. That's the deepest they've been since the Karl Malone and John Stockton, Jerry Sloan era. So, yes, there's smoke there. It would be a neat story, sure. But there is a team that's very interested in Cam Boozer, the Memphis Grizzlies. They really want Cam Boozer. So maybe there's a Danny Ainge trade about to happen here, where it's like, all right, you can come up and get Cam Boozer. We'll slide back, but you're going to have to pay because we're interested in him. But if you pay, we'll let you have him. That's what I think is going on. Because if you look at the roster construction of the Jazz, selecting Cam Boozer doesn't move the needle. And for me, it's not even best player available. It's doubling down on you potentially trading a player like Lauri Markkanen. And you're just not going to do that either. It's this bird in the hand sort of situation here. So that's what I'm thinking is going on. Now, what will happen? Who knows? Only Justin Zanuck and Danny Ainge know what's going to happen. But step 1, which I declared way back at the trade deadline for this offseason, is about to be completed, and that is humongous. And it's kind of funny because the Jazz could have had 2 unprotected first-round picks from the Pacers if they agreed to trade Walker Kessler at the trade deadline this past year. That's pretty funny because if you look at what happened, the Jazz would have 2 top 10 picks in this draft if they decided to go for that. Just interesting how the ball bounces. But yes, Walker Kessler, new deal in the range of $25 to $30 million per year. Some are saying if he goes on the $25 million side, it's more of a team-friendly deal. $30 million, it might be an overpay. We'll see. But when you talk about money like that, at this point, it's just funny money. Like, those are just numbers, right? So 25 to 30 mil a year over, I would think, around 5 years would be the deal, maybe 6. The 6th being a team option, potentially. But this is humongous. The axis of this next season spins on Walker Kessler. Coming back, being healthy, he's had an entire season and now entire offseason to rehab his shoulder after that surgery that knocked him out. Before that surgery, he played, 4 or 5 games. He averaged a double-double. He nailed 6 of his 8 three-pointers. So if you can extrapolate that and put it over an entire season, that is almost MVP-type numbers. It was 14 points, 10 boards, 3 assists, and 1.5 blocks per game, while shooting 6 of 8 from 3 in 5 games. I mean, extrapolate that for a full season. The Jazz are in the playoffs, and they might be, challenging the Spurs and Oklahoma City, depending on who they get in the draft. But if you look at the lineup, it is built specifically for a Victor Wembanyama world. You've got 3 guys on the roster that you can throw at him just in the starting lineup alone, that you can throw at him possession after possession to wear him down. Is he going to block a lot of shots? Absolutely. Is he going to get his points? Yes. But he's going to get tired. And in a 7-game series, if you tucker out the star player, you got a really good chance of knocking him out. So, the Jazz are doing that with this roster. 5 to 3 can all guard against Victor Wembanyama. Not particularly well, but it's just more ways to wear down the kid. So you see that with this roster. It's going to be a very big and very long roster, and that's really what Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck are building. When they lost out on the Wembanyama sweepstakes, they pivoted into building a team that could potentially knock them off. They saw what was happening. They saw the writing on the wall, and they went, all right, how can we create something to counteract what's happening here? And I think they've done a pretty good job of it. I really do. Okay, so that's that. That is the Jazz. That is Utah State, surprisingly. Now let's move on to an update on the Major League Baseball expansion rumors and who's a front runner, who's not a front runner. And what I find interesting about this is it depends on who you talk to. Everybody knows that MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred wants to have expansion before his contract is up and when he retires in 2029. So we're still 3 years out from that. So that's probably a foregone conclusion. He's going to get that across before he walks off into the sunset. So what does that mean for Utah? Well, first, the major obstacle is about what is coming down the road here. And it is a freight train that is coming down the tracks right now, and that is a lockout. The collective bargaining agreement between the Players Union and Major League Baseball expires at the end of this season, and neither side is terribly close. And you should not root for either side, by the way, as a fan. There is no good guy in this fight. There isn't. If you look at the proposals that both sides have pushed forward, you have the players saying this isn't good for fans. Why do you care? The owners are going to charge what they're going to charge regardless of what the CBA is going to be. So it's just a PR smokescreen that they're trying to throw out there saying, hey, root for us. The owners, on the other hand, are proposing a hard salary cap and a hard salary floor, saying this will balance out payrolls across the league. This will allow us to put a more competitive product out for you so you don't have the Colorado Rockies and you don't have the White Sox, Athletics, Rays, Marlins year over year. And this will bring equality to the league, and more people will want to watch because their teams will be more competitive. And so that's their pitch to the fans. Both sides are wrong. The way things are going for fans is they're just getting priced out no matter what happens. Players will always want 3 things. First, job security. Everybody wants that across any industry. Second, job opportunities. The players' union will always want more roster slots open. And third, they want the salaries of their players to only go up. They don't want to see a dip in it. They don't want to see the top of the roller coaster start sliding down. And so they just want it to keep going up, no matter what happens. You have the owners on the other side saying, that's not feasible. That's not possible. There is a tipping point. And the owners are saying the tipping point is now. These salaries cannot keep going the way they're going. So we need this hard salary cap, but to kind of emulate the fans and please them a little bit, we're going to have a salary floor as well, just so that we can have the appearance that we're trying to put together a competitive product on the field. But no matter what happens, our ticket prices are still going to be astronomical. The cost for a hot dog will probably be $15 before you add the bun and any sort of accoutrement. And the ballpark exclusive that you want to purchase, well, we'll probably put that at $75. That's none of the discussions between the two sides are for the fans. That's what I want to get across here. There is no good guy in this fight when it comes to the fan perspective. So don't root for either side. Just root for them to stop being babies and get something done. So that is the first major hurdle that needs to happen before they even begin discussions internally about expanding Major League Baseball. Once that gets done, and I talked about this before on this program and on Radio Ronin, the major hurdles. So this is now the major hurdle. The two hurdles before we got to the CBA expiring were two clubs needed homes. And it was the Tampa Bay Rays and it was the Athletics. At the time, they were Oakland. The Tampa Bay Rays almost have their new home ready to go. The pen has almost met paper. Everybody is just assuming it's going to get done. I'm not in that group. I'm not. Until I see it happen, that's when I'll see it. But Tropicana Field has been rebuilt. They are playing there again after the hurricane. But Major League Baseball wants an outdoor ballpark for Tampa to play in because you play in Tampa. And so that new stadium, the funding and everything else is almost finished and almost ready to go. So that was step one. Step two, or 1B, if you'd rather, was the Athletics getting a home. Major League Baseball didn't want to be in Oakland anymore, period. They just didn't want to be in Oakland. Nobody, no major professional team wants to be in Oakland anymore. Just look at the Golden State Warriors, the Raiders. So the Athletics followed in the Raiders' footsteps and are going to Vegas. Vegas, this construction's already begun. They are slated to be playing opening day in Vegas in 2028. So that's done. That is signed, sealed, delivered. The team is going to move there. Bob's your uncle. So those were the two major hurdles, and now we have the final big hurdle, which is the CBA expiring, and the two sides being petulant little children, and the fans being the losers. Once that gets done, they will begin the process of looking into expansion. So what does that look like? Well, what that looks like is Major League Baseball puts together a task force to go out to these different markets to look at viability, feasibility, what the teams are doing outside of just building a massive stadium to create longevity for these clubs to stay. Because I know there's been a lot of movement in major sports. They don't like it. Owners don't like it. They don't like change. They want everything to be a status quo and just stay there. So that's what they're looking for. If we decide to expand to your market, how are you going to make sure it stays and that we aren't hemorrhaging money in your market like we were in Oakland or like we were in Tampa? Or like we were in Montreal. So what they do is they look at, yes, where is your ballpark being built? What is traffic going to look like coming in and out of the ballpark? How are you going to manage the masses of humanity that are going to be coming to your ballpark 81 times a year? Potentially more, depending on playoffs. Second, what is going on outside of your stadium? Is there going to be living spaces? Is there going to be a shopping center, restaurants? Is there going to be live events like music and whatnot? The poster child for this is Atlanta and what they've built around their ballpark. That's what Major League Baseball wants to have around the majority of their ballparks. Obviously, you can't have that in the historic landmarks of Boston and Chicago in Fenway and Wrigley, respectively, but they want it in other markets because the draw for those two clubs is their stadium. It's that field. For other markets, you need something more. And so that's what they're looking for. Are you building it? How much will it cost? Will the owners need to step in and pay for any of that? What's the windfall look like? And then what is your 5, 10, 20, 25 year expectations on not just fan growth, but monetary growth as well? So that's what they look like. That's just the task force. That takes a long time because they have to go to each market and have that stuff presented to them. Now, you can say that's already been done, and to a certain extent, it has. Obviously, Big League Utah has done this multiple times now. Nashville's been doing it for a while. Portland, Oregon's been doing it forever. And then you got Vancouver starting to do it. You've got Sacramento, who has now thrown their hat in the ring. And so we've got all of those places. Why is Utah considered a front runner? Well, construction's already started for the power plant district. The Larry H. Miller Company is already just plowing ahead and building the district and then saying, hey, this area over here, we have options. We can build that stadium. Or if you guys don't decide to come here, we've got something else already planned. And so we're just going to start construction now. Owners love that because there's no legislation that has to get passed. There's no taxpayer funding or package or whatever you want to call it that needs to get pushed through. It's already done here in Utah. So that's what puts Utah ahead of other markets like Portland or like Vancouver, because those markets still need to get something done there. The next thing is, what does it look like as far as travel for the players? How are we safely and quickly, efficiently, and as cheaply as possible going to get the players from the ballpark to the airport and out so that they can get to their next game? Well, the power plant district is literally right next to the airport. It's like a 30-minute drive. That is better than every other stadium in Major League Baseball. These guys are going to be able to get to and from the ballpark quickly and efficiently. Not only that, there's going to be hotels that they can stay at quite literally within walking distance of the ballpark. So that's another point in Utah's favor. The last point I want to make here for Utah getting a team is the population focus. Utah, Salt Lake City is one of the youngest markets as well as one of the richest because of the Silicon Slopes. Not because of me. I don't have any money. But when you look at the research, that's what they're pitching to Rob Manfred and Major League Baseball. And so the money's there, apparently. And that is a big deal. You're not going into a market that's on a downward trend or a market where the age demographic is aging out. This isn't a market where the age demographic is aging in to watching Major League Baseball, because the outlier has always been me for my friend groups and with my family. I've always been the one that loves baseball. When you look at baseball fan demographics, the average fan is 45 and over. Utah, we're pitching that families that are 28 are going to love this because they can bring their big, huge families to the ballpark and watch a game, and then you're just going to expand from there. So that's everything going in Utah's favor. The last thing I want to mention here is that every market thinks that they're the front runner. One of the reasons why Utah thinks so is USA Today baseball columnist Bob Nightingale, who's been doing this forever, says that Utah is basically in stone. Be careful when you hear that. Don't get your hopes up. Don't try to buy season tickets now. But that is kind of a big deal when you have a senior writer saying that it's basically a lock. So that's your update. I will go further into it as we get closer and closer, but that's your update for now as far as baseball in Utah is concerned. I'm stoked for it. I want to be the voice of whatever the baseball team is, so let's get that going too. But thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave. I told you there was something to talk about.